Can you tell we're an
Shut
excitable
up.
group?
Yeah, it will be a challenge.
Maybe I should
We'll
get my
do our
notes
best.
up.
We'll do our best.
I have an idea that I don't want to lose.
Okay,
Yeah.
ready to roll?
Yeah, I think we're
Okay,
good.
good. Well, welcome back to our podcast, where we explore the intersection of society and business. And we always try to kind of take these big ideas, big concepts that are out there in the world and try to kind of translate them into meaningful action, create momentum.
Exactly.
I'm Bonny.
And I'm Nora. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to be talking about a topic I'm very excited about, but I'm realizing I say that about every episode. But this one in particular, I'm quite passionate about. And it's about a leadership strategy I really feel is often overlooked or devalued, neglected. And in my experience is one of the most critical ones to high performance, doing your best, especially in the face of adversity.
Yeah, and I think kind of the time that we're in, right? Like chaos, uncertainty, a lot on the go, like the speed of change. It's crazy. And I just came out of a workshop with a client where it also came up like they just keep running, and it seems like you can never really catch up. And the topic of failure came up, right? Like we always say like we should celebrate failure, but do we really? Do we learn from it? Do we even have the space to kind of take a step back and look at it? So I think it's very timely and relevant to kind of tap into.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about recovery and repositioning it as a strategic advantage and not recovery in terms of bubble baths, although we do like those, and burnout slogans, which we don't.
Baths,
okay, ice baths. But we'd be remiss to have this conversation, just the two of us. So we're very excited to bring two guests today. First, we have Micaëlla Riché, who is a leading expert in sport development. Micaëlla has over 15 years in experience competing and coaching at the provincial, national, NCAA, and international professional levels. No big deal. Today, Micaëlla is the Director of Basketball Operations at Layup Basketball, a charity focused on the future access of the game through youth programming, coach education, and the culture of basketball. And fun fact that we just kind of learned about Micaëlla is she's working on her doctorate in educational sustainability, applying her background as a professional athlete and coach to bring innovative, evidence-based ideas and solutions to the sports sector. So thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to dive into a little bit more of that in our chat today. And then also we have the one and only Hugh Lawson. Hello, Hugh. The principal of Lawson Leadership Advisory, a boutique firm advisory practice here in Toronto, helping social impact organizations and purpose-driven leaders around the world thrive by providing effective revenue growth strategies and certified emotional intelligence methodologies. I love that.
That's a mouthful.
The profit and the people side of things.
Word.
But I would also would be important to say kind of how we first connected, but you are very passionate about your community, volunteering, mentorship, and giving back to student athletes through social justice. And that's the first place we met, was at a sponsorship conference.
In Hamilton.
Where you brought a group of students. The Hammer.
The Hammer.
I didn't even think we'd plug the Hamilton today. Word. This is exciting. But it was great to meet you and all the students that you brought.
Likewise.
But yeah, thank
We're
you.
in great company.
Yeah, we are. This is fun.
Very excited to have this conversation. Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's jump in. So jumping right into it, kind of, we've had a few conversations about this world of recovery, but wanted to kind of bring you guys up to speed in the dialogue that's been going on in my head. And curious to know if you've been experiencing the same based off of your perspectives. But since January, I follow a bunch of newsletters, listen to a bunch of podcasts, and I was seeing a bunch of headlines come through about CEO turnover, leadership turnover. One stat, like Quartz does a month-over-month analysis, and in January, 14% of CEOs had turned over, had resigned, early retirements, had been pushed out. And you think, 14%, not that big of a deal. It was up 13% from the month before, but it was also double what it was a year prior. So it's kind of like, I was like, oh, wow. As someone that's the owner of a company, I was like, oh, what's going on to people who are leading organizations? And as I looked into it further, there was a follow-up kind of article that McKinsey put out that asked senior leaders, executives, to self-evaluate their performance. And no surprise, the thing that they said unanimously we are great at is what I'd call like big picture thinking, vision setting and alignment, creating new ideas, bringing new perspectives to the table, but also being able to like buckle down and manage costs when they need to. The area that they rated pretty consistently the lowest, I would bucket into personal effectiveness, personal management. So things that it required time, energy, regulation of their emotional bandwidth to be effective. They were like, it's the last thing I think about. So during a time of adversity, it's not how I manage my time, my emotional bandwidth, my energy is the last thing I'm thinking about. And I think that it's hurting. So this kind of brought the whole conversation together of like, maybe there's something around recovery and not, so this is a bit of our hypothesis, not necessarily from a recovery or what we can learn from athletes from a practice makes perfect or the bubble baths and 8 hours of sleep, but is there something deeper there of what leaders can learn from athletes around time, personal time management, energy management, mindset management under the bucket of recovery?
I love your point around like leaders also being praised a lot more for that visionary side of things, right? Like bringing big ideas, bringing like those new innovations into the market. That's kind of when we talk leaders, think leaders, I feel like we tend to gravitate towards that side of things.
Yeah.
Whereas the more deeper inner layer of leadership that is there in every leader, I think, or should be there in every leader, is much more around like your alignment with the work that you're doing, personal and professionally, your mindset, as you said, your mental capacity, the speed of change. So I like that hypothesis of like, what can we do, or like, is there something deeper in each leader in terms of mindset, taking time to recover, that would prevent things like burnout, exiting as a CEO, etc.
Well,
Let's
this
head
is
to
where
our guest.
we don't know the
Yeah,
answers.
no.
We're hoping the two of you do.
No
But-
pressure.
Lot
of thought. Yeah, that could be hours
But,
of
yeah.
conversation.
Thought. This is also the fun part of we've got 30 minutes together. So let's see what we can
Nice.
cover. But I am curious, Hugh, with your experience working with leaders around the world,
Yeah.
this kind of hypothesis or little conundrum or what's happening? Are you seeing it play out in real time? Is this the real experience? What can you share?
Yeah, just from my own personal leadership experience in the last 3 years, and just what I'm seeing with clients, not only here, but especially in the Gulf region, where everything's under massive transformation and quantum growth. The one thing when I take a step back and I observe these really incredible people is they're very selfless.
Mm.
And in many cases, their selflessness and trying to do for the greater good of the organization, the greater good of their teams, it's often at their own expense, which from a long-term standpoint ends up being at everybody else's expense.
Right.
Because they don't set. So when you talk about equating it to like the athletic experience, when I was playing, I was just thinking about it. I had all these notes, but then something else came to me. Everything we did had structure, and we had guardrails around everything. Like when you're watching game film, that's all you're doing, watching game film. And if for any reason you lost your way in that room, you get an earful from the coach. If you're in the weight room, you're in the weight room. If you're getting taped up, you're getting taped up. If you're on field and you're working through all your assignments, you're on field working through all your assignments. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything is fluid.
Right.
So really what it comes down to and just the solutions that we're about to embark on is guardrails, like focus.
Interesting.
Which in the athletic sphere, that's what you do. You visualize, right? Like you visualize what you're going to do. I'm going to put up 30 on this clown next week, in season game. Not me. I'm just thinking you like,
Micaëlla went.
Micaëlla got mad game, right? But it was all about guardrails. And I've heard this term over and over again over the years, simplify to amplify. And that's what a lot of it comes down to. It's like you get so lost in all your roles and responsibilities and all the people that you feel responsible for that you don't even get time to deep think. So
Yeah.
the guardrails, I think, is one thing if you want to equate it to athletic
I
experience.
feel
You took a
like you've
deep
got it.
sigh.
Yeah,
I heard
I heard
so
that
many
side.
Go.
questions.
I'm
I've
taking
been
a step
trying
back.
to like
The floor is
hold
yours.
my
The floor is-
thoughts.
Yeah,
go for it. Don't let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of this is leaders and visionaries who are trying to do both being on the balcony and being in the weeds at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in athletics, if I go out there and my visualization is to get 30,
Yeah.
then I need someone to get 20 rebounds, or I need 4 people to get 20 rebounds.
Mhm.
And I also need some people to play defense, and I need some people to.
Mhm.
So do your job,
Mhm.
also help your teammate,
Yep.
right? Know your personnel, know how you're assigning things to different people. But as leaders with a leadership unit, you should have people in places, ideally you do, who are able to handle certain things. And as a leader and a visionary, stay on the balcony and be in that mental space of
Mhm.
operating and let other people operationalize in a state of flow.
Yes.
But you have to know your personnel and you have to do your role so that the team has what they need to do it also, right? So,
That's very profound.
but we're
Yeah.
in a system that, okay, we say we can talk about sports, you talk about recovery in sports, but
Mm.
we count the wins and we count the points and we track those stats.
Mhm.
So in work, we say, oh, this is what matters, but what are we measuring? What are the real
Yeah.
KPIs that we're
Mhm.
accountable to succeed
Yeah.
and meet?
Mhm.
Because your bubble bath is going to have to be with the laptop,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or how we say we
Yeah.
preach recovery, but then we measure different outcomes.
Right.
So I think
so-
a lot of people are doing their best in their CEO roles, et cetera, coaching roles,
Yep.
et cetera. But sometimes you don't have the right people in place to be able to let go.
Mhm.
Sometimes you don't have the self-control to let go. And you
Yeah,
need
you
to
don't
check
have it
yourself.
in you.
Mhm.
You
You
don't
need to
have
check
it in
yourself.
you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's interesting. There's like that piece of like selflessness,
Mhm.
right? But in being selfless, are you also being a bit selfish because you can't let go, or like it's an interesting.
Yeah.
And how you build leaders is by allowing other people. So, as a CEO who's supposed to be a visionary, you shouldn't be doing some of these things that are your responsibility,
Yeah.
right? But if I empower someone else to do it,
Yeah.
now you're learning the nitty gritty of being a CEO. Now you know the admin side behind the scenes of what it is. And now you can bring your own vision to life, or you empower other leaders by allowing them to take some of this work off your plate.
Mhm.
Now, delegating is a whole next podcast episode.
Yeah.
That's
But-
true.
I think there is something interesting in like I think we're saying like the leader, the visionary, the CEO should be the equivalent of the coach, right? At the same time, we're saying what leaders are experiencing today is that everything's becoming fluid. You have to
Yeah.
be the visionary 1 minute, and then you have to be the operator the
Yeah.
next minute. Like it's almost like where
Mhm.
the leaders are the foreman and not
Yes.
the coach. How kind of if we are aligned with that analogy, like guardrails
Mhm.
is I think something that you mentioned that exists in sport. Like
Mhm.
the coach has a certain
There's
role.
a time and a place for
that
certain
role
things.
is
Yeah.
being respected.
Yeah.
It's the visionary of the team. It's kind of they set out that strategy.
Mhm.
How did that came to be like that in sport? Like how can we take that and translate that back into the business world and free those visionaries from
I think it's a necessity.
Mm.
So what I'm experiencing, particularly in the Gulf region, is leaders that have like a high propensity for external advisory. And that's also a cultural sensitivity because when you
Mhm.
look into like the history of the region, leaders in the Arab world have always had external advisors. That's normal for them.
interesting.
But when you see how well it works, because there's so many hands on deck, where you bring in advisory and expertise to bring a line of sight that you don't have, the necessity for them is that they all have to meet some very big goals. Like every country in that region has a vision initiative, and there's an end date, and there's no extension. But you got to meet that date, and they're all ahead of schedule. But it's a whole lot of hands. Like it's a village working together, and it's a necessity because so as an example, last year I was in Saudi Arabia in May, and I just met all these really impressive women leaders there at this conference. And I would say 60% of them I met last May that were director level, they're SVPs now.
Mm.
It's not even a year.
Wow.
So if you're going that fast, you have to delegate. And that's a bit of a learning journey, which is a challenge. It's not perfect, but they're doing their best. Because another stat in that region that's really sobering is that 66% of workers in the GCC have some form of burnout
Mm.
or mental well-being challenge.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they're going so fast.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
interesting of this like delegate for sure, but when
Yeah.
there is like the delegation, if you're going that fast, yes, 100%. But to your point, that's a
Yeah.
whole other episode talking about effective delegation
Yeah.
and staying in your swim lanes and being a team and understanding that. So maybe we'll have you guys back. We definitely will and talk to you about it.
Mhm.
But when the costs of not doing that is always this burnout, is this
Yes.
exhaustion. And are you seeing they're openly discussing that? Or is it
Yeah,
like you
it's
got to
becoming
hide that you're
way now.
burnout?
It's
Yeah.
becoming
Mm.
that way now. Um, i- Vulnerability is a thing. Like it is a
Yeah.
thing, and it's they're on that journey right now. But at the same time, what they're learning now is this narrative around recovery.
Recovery. Yeah.
We got to race the car. We got to have the fastest lap, but
Yeah.
we need to pull the car in for a pit from time to time, change
Yeah.
the tires, and put new fuel in it. So
And be intentional about it,
Yeah, be
right? Not
intentional
just
about-
like, oh no,
yeah,
I need to go have
Yeah.
a personal
Yeah.
break for 12 months.
What
Yeah.
I feel like is a theme in all of this continues to be, you mentioned those goals are hard and they have strict deadlines, et cetera. But then we're also saying that we have to do recovery. And when we're measuring a certain thing we have no choice, it comes at a personal cost
Yeah.
because that's the resource that still has to give.
Yeah.
So I'll combine my recovery, we'll talk about that later. I'll combine my recovery methods to compromise and meet both needs.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if we continue to measure certain outcomes and we say, oh, well, we want recovery, we have to like look a little higher.
Right. And this is where the hustle culture starts, right? If
Yeah.
you're measuring revenues or whatever it may cost, like that is it. They're not measuring. And I mean, some organizations have done a better job. And I think we saw this, oh, here I go again through the pandemic. Also bringing it up of like prioritizing employee well-being and health and monitoring those. But I think you're right. When push comes to shove, what are folks looking at? It's the numbers on an earnings report or on your financial statements and not
And they
necessarily
tend to
your
or
recovery.
seem to incentivize that just pushing harder and go, 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 go,
Yeah.
go.
Accuse me of being a rose-colored optimist. In my heart of hearts, I feel that you can have ambitious goals
Mm-hmm.
You
and
can
have
both.
well-being,
Yeah.
but the well-being and the recovery have to be part of the KPIs
yeah.
Yeah.
for the goals. Yeah.
I also think how we value, again, people in a team has to be reevaluated because I can't do it all. If I'm
Right.
a CEO of an
Yeah.
organization, there's departments for a reason and there's department leads
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah.
So we have to reframe how we choose to operate. And I also think we're talking about the KPIs and the measurables, but when people start to, so there's a proof that you build resilience through cycles of stress combined with cycles of recovery.
Mhm.
And eventually you can load your stress to be able to tolerate more because you recover in between. And you see it physiologically in athletic training. I don't start running 10 miles. I run,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you see it with how people learn and how you load on learning. You see it with how people perform. And I think when as humans, I take a second and I'm like, you know what? I need a 10-minute walk. I'm going to go take a
Yeah.
10-minute walk and I get that thing done that would have taken me 35 minutes and I get it done in 15
yeah.
because I took a second and took a walk. So I think we have to also give ourselves a chance to really try these things and see that like, oh, this is
Yeah.
actually fueling my recovery because you're right. We can have both.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
have both. Yeah.
We
Which
have to
I-
reframe
that-
how we work with people, how we use our teams, and how we
I'm-
prioritize what really matters to us.
And I love that. And I think when like you read those lists of like the top 5 things every leader needs in their backpack to be effective, right? And people are like, oh, I've got to go get an MBA and I need to have financial literacy and I need to understand my customer, our vision, all of those pieces. You never hear like recovery, like to be effective. And I loved those like cycles that you had mentioned. You never hear it's like, and something in my toolkit that is structured, it's intentional, it's planned for, it's part of the mix that I have to call upon is my recovery. And again, like I'd love to segue the conversation into like unpacking or reframing what recovery means is. Because I worry that when we first started talking about, and we've joked about it, it becomes the like ice baths, the sleep, the make sure you take your vacation days, where I think it's much more than that around the time, energy, but also like your mindset management and how you recover from losses, recover from setbacks. You had mentioned at the beginning, failures. Like everyone's like, celebrate a loss, celebrate a learning, or like a key learning from a failure. Who in the business world actually does that? You sweep it along. Maybe someone gets in trouble for it and you move forward. But maybe we can talk a little bit about this like reframing of, to your point, you can have it all. You can have it have both ways. And burnout is coming and you can see it. In some cultures it's talked about more openly. Some you just see it happening. But yeah, what are your thoughts on reframing recovery? And maybe Micaëlla, we can start with you of coming from an elite basketball piece. Like what role did recovery play in your toolkit of things?
Yeah, I'm gonna say like a lot of other athletes, I didn't prioritize it as much when I had more of a choice versus now my body's like, you need to chill, right? And so I think we grow with and through our bodies. But I do have very concrete examples of taking a rest day and performing much better the second day, of fueling my body properly and performing much better, of sometimes going for a walk. And I think recovery looks very different for different people. We talked about cycles. What does recovery look like on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis?
Yeah.
Because I need glimpses of recovery. Maybe it's being mindful with my coffee and reading the newspaper to start my day. And that's a moment of recovery, whether that's psychological for you or moments of emotional recovery. If everything's high emotion, like how do you unplug from that, right? Sometimes work feels like recovery from me because I've been exercising in the gym and I'm like, okay, let me just chill and drink my smoothie while I do my job, right? So I think different forms of recovery to serve yourself, different cycles of recovery from daily to weekly to monthly to annually. And also understanding that it's going to look different for everyone. And you mentioned recovery from loss or failure. It's the corny failure is a teacher saying, but like really like where did we go wrong with this? How do we avoid this next time? And reframing a loss or a failure for as a teaching moment is always like, okay, I feel better. I can move on now. I have closure. I know how not to make the same mistake again.
Yeah. And I feel like there's still something there. Like we see it in the business world, right? Like I feel like in the sports world, it's much more like ingrained in
we
what
still
you
don't
do.
it. We say it, but we still don't do it. So at which point are we going to be like, oh man, look at me in the same situation over again, injured again because I didn't recover again? How much science do you want?
Yeah.
Make a choice and be better. And I think that some of it is where it starts, and it's going to take maybe that we were mentioning big names as Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk or whatever to be the ones to say like, I'm successful because I prioritize my recovery, for people to be like, oh, wait, you can be competitive and prioritize recovery at the same time. And maybe prioritizing recovery will actually give you a competitive advantage too.
Yes.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry.
I was
Mine too.
no.
Sorry.
I was like, it is the competitive. No one's
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? We were talking about panels earlier. You sit down and they go, "What's your competitive product market fit?" Or like first to market on things, or our developers. It's like if an executive said, "My recovery strategy," you'd be like,
Or
"Come
like
again now?"
failing fast, but truly like embracing, learning from that failure, taking the time to recover. One of
And
our
my
key
brain
objectives is
is-
around recovery.
Yeah.
What would that look like? I also like, maybe I'm just a bit misled by the top athletes. Like I read something around LeBron James, right? He spends $1.5 million yearly on his recovery.
And
Now,
he's playing at 40 plus. So
Yeah.
and we're not all LeBron.
Yeah.
But
But if you
there's
put
a
that
lot
in
of parallels.
perspective-
There's a lot of parallels in the workspace. When I saw in the prep documents recovery as a competitive advantage, I totally resonated with me because at a later stage in your career, how you manage yourself, like your mental well-being, even your physical well-being, it's equivalent of just working on a fadeaway jumper. Like, you just can't dunk on people in your 30s. You're gonna have to work. Every great player has a fadeaway jumper at some point, and and recovery is a competitive advantage. And if you're able to present a metric or an ROI to that, and you have the right person amplifying it, like that, like when I hear about what LeBron does to recover and to protect his physical and mental well-being, and then seeing how he's playing at such a high level well into his 40s, like he can go for another 3 years.
Right.
That just really resonates with me.
Mhm.
And I'm also on this entrepreneurial journey in my 50s. Journaling is ubiquitous.
Mm.
Mm.
Meditation is ubiquitous. Water is ubiquitous. Sleep is a work in progress, but I'm getting there. Walks,
Mm.
gym, hot sauna, cold shower. These are all recovery things because I want to do this for a long time.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's incredible when you have something that motivates you to consider recovery over hustle, knowing that a recovery mentality is a lot more long sustaining.
Mhm.
The other thing too that shifted my mindset around recovery was social justice. So George Floyd hit, world just went upside down. Everybody went ham. Like, let's do something about this.
Mm.
Let's hit the streets. Let's start all these initiatives. Like, oh, let's start this non-for-profit here. Let's push for these initiatives here. Let's get people to be more intentional.
Mhm.
Let's be the one in the room. Let's be the elephant in the room that's like making people change. And it was exhilarating, but it wasn't sustainable. And people started dropping dead.
It was the let me do 100 push-ups every day. For
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
week.
But it was just like everybody was
hard.
pushing so hard,
Yeah.
fueled on emotion, and then people
Yeah.
started dropping dead, like in their 30s, in their 40s, suddenly. And it happened a lot, especially in the GTA with people, peers of mine. And I was on a supper club Zoom call for Black men, chaired by a guy named Brandon Hay. And they had men from NYC, Toronto, Argentina, Rio. It was just like a vibe, right? And this dude in Baltimore, he said, okay, we're doing all this work, we're putting all this work, but I want to remind all you brothers, rest is part of the resistance.
Mm.
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 You can't have resistance without rest.
Wow.
And when he said that, it was just like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and to me, that was the catalyst where it's like, okay, I need to rest, because if I don't rest, I could die. I think, how do we get that same kind of motivation for people to flip things on its head and make recovery the leading
Yeah.
narrative in our work? Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I think that's
Yeah.
where science and the sport parallel comes in really neatly. And I have a sport background. I recognize that people who don't understand how like sport is literally life. But like I think of weight training, and when you strength train, which could be equatable to the work period, you're tearing your muscle fibers.
Yeah.
And when you rest, your muscle fibers rebuild themselves, which creates scar tissue, which is why your muscles get bigger. So that booty you're working for, or those abs, that six
I'm
pack.
trying to get rid of my booty.
Man.
I need the app for that.
I'll
to
give
tell
you
me what
some of
that
it.
is.
I'd love it.
But that analogy of muscle fibers ripping and only giving you those gains while they're resting is
Yeah.
science. And now there's science. Why would the brain work any differently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So I think
Yeah.
like, how do we bring proof, receipts?
Well,
to
it's
this
interesting.
stuff?
There's this bit of, the saying, measure what matters, or
Yeah.
you
If you can't measure it, it doesn't
won't
matter.
it won't get
Yeah, it
done.
won't
So
matter,
it goes
yeah.
full circle back to your, out of the gate of what's being measured are these business results, and it's not the recovery piece. So it falls to the bottom. And there's a bit of that. I love that. It's, if you want to go a long way, like you need to do this, right? And we've talked about a few from a physical recovery. I love the journaling piece, the failure piece. Like there's a whole bunch of elements in here that hopefully folks who are listening to this are just stopping going, yeah, why don't I intentionally recover beyond making sure I use my
Yeah.
vacation days? Or like my app is telling me my sleep score sucks, right? Like how do we
Yeah.
move beyond that?
Yeah.
But I would find, like, in you just sharing some of your recovery kind of pack. I'm curious on your side of things, and you said you learned the hard way through your athletic days. But like, what do you do now as recovery?
Yeah.
What's your intentional, structured way?
I love Legos.
Oh,
Oh,
fun.
wow.
Lots of
Nice,
fun. I'll
nice.
Did
just
you
do
see
like.
that they're bringing out like sneakers and Lego like that collab?
So I do have a sneaker brick. Yep, I do have a
Nice.
sneaker Lego. Yep.
That's cool.
And what
some-
is it about Lego, though?
It's the mindfulness of it, and it's
Yeah.
the like building and doing things with my hands. So I can put on lo-fi beats, or I can put on a Netflix episode and have my glass of wine, and I'm building Legos for a couple hours. Or
You get lost in it too,
you
right?
get lost in it,
Yeah.
and my phone's on D&D. Like, so that's very mindful for me. I love riding my bike. It's
Yeah.
something I do kind of
Nice.
solo. I ride lots and lots of kilometers. So
Yeah.
summer season's right around the corner. That's something that's good for my body and good for my mind.
And you're like an
Um,
explorer when you do that.
I do.
Mhm.
Yeah. I stop
Yeah.
at coffee shops. I bring
Yeah.
a book.
Yeah.
I eat a snack. Like, it becomes a whole experience. Sometimes I do tend to recharge alone or
Mm.
with select people. So
Mm.
I'm not the type to like. I had a friend in university, and this is what helped me understand introverts versus extroverts. We were in the same classes, and we were both working as grad assistants with the Kansas State women's basketball program, and we'd go on the same road trips, have the same experiences, and we'd come back, and he'd be like, "Let's go get a drink," and I'd be like, "I am about to close my door, put on a face mask, and drink my tea." Like, good night, you
Yeah.
know? So how you recharge and informs how you recover, because what is it that you need, and what kind of stimulus, what
Yeah.
type of recovery do you need?
Yeah.
I don't know the stat on this, but there's like 7 types, and it makes sense: physical, emotional, right? Psychological. What are the types of recovery that you need, and how do you fill that gap?
In that
Because
moment.
Netflix sometimes works, but
Yeah.
sometimes it makes you more exhausted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
does.
that's true.
Touching on what you're talking about, because I mean, as long as I've known you, you've always been dynamic, and you just really illuminate through a screen.
I appreciate that.
Oh, it's all good. You had me at hello. Would you consider yourself like an ambivert? Because that's the part I'm
Yes.
struggling with. Everybody goes, "Oh, Hugh's an extrovert," but it's everything you said. I love being alone. Like, I love traveling by myself. I love my walks, and I love just reading
Yeah.
and just watching TV by myself, much
Yeah.
to my family's chagrin. Like, it's like, yeah,
No, but I think that is a
Yeah.
thing. And it's funny because for a while I was like, oh, I don't like having friends, which is such a dramatic statement in true Micaëlla fashion. But I'm like, if I associate friends with going out to a restaurant where there's loud music playing, it's overstimulating, there's a table of 6
Yeah.
people, I have to entertain conversation with 6.
Yeah.
No, thank you. But I'll go take a 2-hour walk and have a
and
coffee
you'd be
with
so
you.
happy.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what
Yeah.
I needed.
Yeah.
So the types of interactions that I allow myself to have socially, I've become much more intentional with
Yeah,
because I'm
same
like,
here.
this is exhausting to me. But come do flow with me, or let's go take a walk, or let's go, do different things. So ambivert, absolutely.
Yeah, because here you are smashing it on a podcast. Like, if you're like straight up introvert, you wouldn't even have returned
Yeah.
Nora's email.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
But you
like,
did pretty
I'm
quickly.
so happy to see this in
Yeah.
action because I'm on that journey myself. Of
Yeah.
Like, because I love being alone, but
Yeah.
I don't
And
mind talking to 1,000 people. You know?
Well, and it's
No.
interesting bringing it to the recovery piece.
Yeah.
Like, there's been a couple pieces around.
Nice.
there's-
You're bringing us back
You
on.
know, that's
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. Beforehand, I was like,
Focus,
I
Hugh.
don't know if we're going to be able to keep. We're a high energy
doing
group.
great. You're doing
we
great.
are
You're
doing
doing
well.
great. Yeah.
Right
But
in, Nora.
Yeah, right, but I mean, normally it's the two of us reining each other in.
Yeah.
But I think, there's in these examples, it's a bit of like recovery doesn't have to be this big thing of LeBron James, 1.5 million.
No.
He's got Cairo or this and whatever Chambers.
Make it a walking meeting.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
color while you're on a call.
Yeah. Like I
where you're
read
talking a lot.
Stanford was like 10 minutes of walking increases your creativity by 60%.
There's
Just
Yeah.
stand up and leave. When your watch tells you it's time to stand up, just like do it. Like
Yeah.
there's smaller things, there's bigger things around recognizing what you need, what the situation needs. It could be proactively planning out going on those vacations by yourself or just creating that space, or you need to be around people to help lift your energy up. But
Yeah.
there's like a whole bunch of
You
the
know what?
journaling.
You know what really fuels recovery? And this is something that's kind of near and dear to me because I spend a lot of time around emotional intelligence methodologies. You got to know yourself. Like, you
Yeah.
have to be self-aware.
Yeah.
Because if you're self-aware, then you know when it's time. Yeah, like the Kenny Rogers song, right? When you
I
got to
think
fold
it's-
them, hold them, right? Or whatever,
Yeah.
walk away, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone, and you've been saying
Yeah.
that too. Also wanted to put the LeBron James into perspective. Like the 1.5 million relative to his income
It's 3%.
is 3%.
Yeah.
Like for someone who makes $100,000 a year, that's $3,000. And it's not all about money, but just
Yeah.
to put it in perspective, it doesn't have to be big.
Huge.
No.
Also want to kind of in summary of what we've been talking about, sure, there is the individual like recovery, but I think there's also the larger sentiment that we've been talking about, like how do we normalize this in businesses, right? Like how do we go from just saying recovery is important, fail fast, embrace failure, celebrate failure. One plug here, what I really love is kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but fuck up nights. It's just
Yeah,
kind
a
of,
guy in my network, Barry Hillier, he goes to them. And I was
It's
like,
really
I want to
cool.
go to that too. I just can't. If my mom says, "Well, what did you do?"
I've never heard of this. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
it's
we're
off the
talking
chain.
about.
It's incredible. But
it's
I
like
just
a
don't.
speaker series
Yeah.
where or kind of the night of, like 3 people stand up, get up on stage and talk about their business fuck ups.
Yeah,
Interesting.
And then
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
kind of just embraces that, learns from it, because everyone resonates with it, right? So
Mhm.
it's
An authenticity.
a,
We're all in this
a
together.
form of
Vulnerability,
celebrating
too.
it and
Yeah.
showing that vulnerability.
yeah, that's sweet.
So with that
Wait,
being,
sorry,
yeah,
last real
get
quick.
it in
I
there.
know.
Get it in
I
there.
also think that piece of vulnerability and of transparency, we have a like energy of gatekeeping, as if like one candle loses something from lighting another candle, and that's not the case. And I think that the piece of vulnerability and transparency and open communication is how we make the change.
Yeah.
Because we all know there's science behind it. I personally feel better after taking a 10-minute walk. So like, what's
Yeah.
stopping us from doing
Doing
it?
it, yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
And if your leaders
collectively.
are doing it, then you create a safe space for you to do
Yeah.
it. Too.
Yeah,
create a
lead by
culture of
example,
doing
yeah.
You
that.
create a
Yeah.
culture. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's time we got to wrap it up. Although I kind of want to just stay.
Let's just keep going.
I know.
It's gonna take
I
me
know.
2 hours to get home. I
yeah.
work
You
for
said a
this-
30-minute podcast. I was like, I
Yeah, I was
have
like,
I know.
more than
right.
30 minutes worth of
Part one.
information on this.
Hell
But I
no.
think there's some great pieces around
Yeah.
this. Something is happening, right?
Mhm.
The burnout, the hustle culture,
Mhm.
the grind, the rapid growth. You combine that with kind of what the world's going through, so much uncertainty, volatility, it's exhausting. There is way more, I think, vulnerability about it, but it's how do we, within our knowing our own selves and as leaders and in the workplace, really start to prioritize recovery as that competitive advantage, that secret thing in our knapsack. And yes, some people might say it's a privilege and it costs money, but it doesn't have to. Going for a walk outside doesn't have to be like that. And how can you start doing it and role modeling it for your teams and for other people? So I think you've given us a lot to think about. And I don't know, feel like we need a part 2 of this to dig into it a little bit
down.
more.
I'm
I feel like the whole recovering from loss, the journaling, like we barely scratched the surface there. But I do thank you guys for coming. And we like to end these with like a challenge to our listener. What's one thing you want to challenge them to do differently tomorrow? Is there something either of you
Yeah.
can think about?
I wanted to build off what you said around self-awareness. My challenge is take a second to give you space to be self-aware. My alarm rings in the morning and I'm like, this is what I have to do. This is the first thing on my calendar. I want to get the gym before whatever, right? And I don't stop and think like, how am I feeling?
Yeah.
right
What's
now?
my
Right.
headspace
Yeah.
today?
What's my headspace today?
The alarm goes off. What's my headspace today?
And at different moments throughout the day. So
Yeah.
take a second and give yourself an opportunity to be self-aware.
That's cool. I love it.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Nice.
Anything
Thanks.
else on your end?
No, I think we've learned a lot. There's still a lot more to unpack. Starts with self-awareness. I think let's still learn, even though you say as an athlete, I still haven't kind of cracked the code for it. I think there is a
But I'm
lot to
trying.
learn from the sports world, kind of move into the business world. And we just need to be a little kinder to ourselves as
Agreed.
business leaders.
Yeah.
Give ourselves
Um,
grace. Yeah.
give
That's-
ourselves grace and let's kind of try to
Yeah.
make that change in the world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have a challenge?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. If everybody's zigging, zag.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's the
I've
bar.
been zagging for 2 years, and it's incredible what can manifest when you zag
Wow.
and you go down a road less traveled. So, if you got this tech bro hustle culture in your organization,
Do something different.
do something about it.
Yeah.
Leave.
Chicken scratch on a pad.
What's that?
I
Yeah.
said chicken scratch on a pad. Go
Word.
the opposite way.
Yeah. Zag. Zag.
That's so cool.
Love
Zag.
Take a moment to check in with yourself. How am I
Mhm.
doing today? And when they zig,
Yeah. Zag.
you zag.
Zag.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
both of you, for joining us today. We truly were in great
pleasure.
company, and it was an excellent start to a conversation, I feel like, as
Ooh,
we
part two?
anticipated, a part 2. But to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. And if you want to join the conversation, drop a comment in or reach out to us. We'd love to continue the conversation with you.
Thanks, y'all.
Catch us
Thank
next
you.
time.